everybody get here. For some, you're just tickled to death because it feels like fall's in the air, and there's others like me miss the hot weather already. I see the Smiths are already counting the days down to get to Florida to get out of here. But we just want to welcome everybody that is here today. Again, don't forget, following the service downstairs, we have Bible study. Bob David is going to be doing it. We just purchased I think it's a 200-inch TV set. I'm not sure how big that thing is down there, but it's big. And so he's going to be using that, so make sure that. Also, don't forget, Wednesday night we've been doing a great study on the parables of the kingdom. And so at 6:30 Wednesday night, we do a great Bible study on that up here, so you're invited to that as well. And I already mentioned River Praise, October 6th. Again, spread that around so we can be here for that. There's a true story. After the Civil War, Robert E. Lee was traveling, and he was invited to a home in Kentucky. And as he got there, this woman said, "Come, I have to show you something." And she took him out to the front of her yard where there was this beautiful, or what used to be, a beautiful oak tree. And she bitterly cried as she says, "Look at it. The limbs have been blown off. The trunk is damaged because those Northern soldiers did this during the war." And she looked to Robert E. Lee for word of condemning the North, maybe at least sympathize with their loss. And Robert E. Lee, for a moment, just stood there and looked at the woman, and he looked at the tree. And he said to her, "Cut it down. Just cut that tree down and forget it." And he said, "It is better to forgive the injustices of the past and allow them to remain, and let bitterness take root and poison the rest of your life. Cut it down. Don't dwell on it." Romans 8, 1-2 says, "So now there is no condemnation for those who belong to Christ Jesus. And because you belong to him, the power of the life-giving Spirit has freed you from the power of sin and that leads to death." What are we going to talk about today? As you can see by we're going to talk about forgiveness. We're going to close out our series on David. And my hope, as we talked about King David, we see David as a real person. To see the comparisons of his life and our life. To see the opportunities that we have in our life that we can change. To imitate some of the qualities that David had that made him a man after God's own heart. And one of the most important qualities is to have a forgiving spirit. This attitude is hard to do sometimes. It's difficult, sometimes very difficult, because as you can see, instead of full of forgiveness, most people opt for one of these three responses. First, number one, instead of complete forgiveness, we offer conditional forgiveness. I'll forgive you if, or I'll forgive you as soon as. If you come back and try to make things right, I'll forgive you. If you own up to your part of what's happened, maybe I'll forgive you. This is conditional forgiveness. It says, I'm waiting. Kind of like a tiger waiting with his tail just swishing back and forth, ready to make the move, whether or not it's going to pounce on you or just walk away. And sometimes we're that way. Number two, it's partial forgiveness. I'll forgive you, but I ain't going to forget. Or I'll forgive you, just get out of my life. I don't want to see you anymore. I'll forgive you until it happens again and see what happens. And there's a lot of people who are willing to forgive, they just don't want to see that person again. Then there's a third one, delayed forgiveness. I'll forgive you, but give me some time. It's going to take some time, and maybe I'll forgive you. And this is a common reaction of someone who's been really, really hurt. And they've nursed that hurt over the years. You see, most of us would rather sit on the judgment seat than to sit and have mercy. If someone did us wrong, we'd rather just make them squirm and think about it. You see, forgiveness isn't just about the other person. Forgiveness is all about us. When we're not forgiving, it becomes very dramatic. It becomes a downward spiral in our lives. First of all, of course, there's an offense. Something happens. And if there isn't forgiveness after that offense, then resentment starts to begin to build. And if there isn't forgiveness after resentment, hatred comes to take its place. And from sustained hatred, there's a grudge now. And if we don't take repentance after this grudge, now there's going to be revenge. You're just waiting, and I'm going to get you. I'm thinking about it, but I'm going to get you. You just watch and see. So now I got a little quiz here, because a lot of times our personalities and certain things, you say a name and there's a quality that goes with that name. So just see, let's see how well you do. You're graded on this. When I mention the name of Thomas, doubt. Very good. How about this one? If I say Jezebel, we can go with adultery. All right, there you go. She's dropping terms over here that are just shocking. I got a picture of Pam next. No. Judas. Betrayal. Very good. You guys are knocking us out of the park. Shimei. What? Shimei. We got a question here. When you leave this worship service today, you're going to know this person, and you're going to remember what he's going to be identified with. You see, he suffered from a spiritual illness that unfortunately both Christians and non-Christians alike, that can destroy them spiritually, even the strongest man. What Shimei suffered was what we call dead dog syndrome. You don't know how hard it is, and I didn't get a picture because I said, I'm going to get a picture of dead dog syndrome. You didn't like the pictures I could have put up. Nobody wants to see a real dead dog. But we're going to talk about what is this dead dog syndrome. So, we're finishing God's heart, and we know today we're going to be talking about a forgiving heart. And if you'd like to follow along, we're going to be in 2 Samuel chapter 16. So let's take a look today at the forgiveness in the life of David. Because this is a great place now. We're at the end. This is the last time. We've gone over some of the awful times in David's life. David did not have a perfect life. David suffered time and time and time again, had all kinds of troubles in his life. We know that it really all started when he sinned with Bathsheba. This is really when the downfall started. And remember, the prophet Nathan came to him and pointed, you're the man. And because of your sin, he lists a bunch of things that were going to happen to David. He said, the baby that Bathsheba's going to have, she's going to have, and that baby's going to die. And it did. He said, oh, your wives that you have, they're going to be taken advantage of in front of everybody in public. And that happened. He said, your son, Absalom, is going to conspire against you, and he's going to take your throne. And it did. And so now we're in David's life here. His son is ruling over Israel. David is on the run. David is now at the lowest part of his life. David is at what he says, I'm at rock bottom. In Psalms, he calls it the pit of destruction. Things are going so bad. I don't know if you've ever been there. I think we all have in certain times where it just seems like I can't believe what's going on. And then it feels like you're in quicksand. And the more you try to fight it, the deeper it keeps going. And you think this has got to be it, and you keep sinking. And for David, this was a desperate moment. Guilt was crushing him. The self-deflating thoughts were occupying his mind. And then this guy, Shimei, comes out of nowhere to add to David's misery. I mean, to put it bluntly, the Shimei is a jerk. One of those type of guys who wants to hit you when you're already down. I mean, the guy's a real, true loser. What somebody referred to as a reptile of the house of Saul. So our scriptures, we look at it today from verse 5 through 8. As King David approached Barium, a man from the same clan as Saul's family came out from there. His name was Shimei, son of Gera, and he cursed as he came out. He pelted David and all the king's officials with stones. Through all the troops and the special guards were on David's right and left. He cursed. And Shimei said, get out, you murderer, you scoundrel. The Lord has repaid you for all the blood you shed in the household of Saul, in whose place you have reigned. The Lord has given the kingdom in the hands of your son Absalom. You have come to ruin because you're a murderer. So David is leaving. He's on the run. He's in the depths of just, I can't believe this is going on in my life. And some dude comes out of nowhere and starts pelting him with rocks and throwing dirt at him. You see, Shimei was a reprobate, basically. What I like to call nothing but a real jerk. That kind of person that you're down, face down in the dirt, he don't help you up, he just steps on you more. You're at your very ultimate, lowest part of your life, and this guy comes and hits you below the belt. And when you try to get up, he knocks you down again. And the question is, what would cause Shimei to behave like a jerk? Well, the reason is he had this dead dog syndrome. And you're saying, what is this dead dog syndrome? What is it? It's a critical spirit. It's having a critical spirit. And what are some of the symptoms of this disease? It's that desire to verbally attack someone, to lash out, to tear somebody down. And the question is, do we have it? Do we have this dead dog syndrome? Do we have a critical spirit? Have you ever in your life wrote a letter, sent a text, sent an email that wasn't very nice? Let somebody have it. You see it more than ever because everybody, I can do this. I'll tell you who I am, and I'll tell you who you are. Have you ever, again, maybe went to a ball game and let the referee know exactly what you think about him? Yes, I have. Several times. And I realize that there's a signal that a ref has when all I'm just trying to tell him what I think about him. Something like this. I've had that happen before. But I think I told you my classic line when I was so mad I called the ref over. I said, you can't give me a technical for thinking, can you? He says, well, no, I can't. Well, I think you're the worst ref I ever saw in my whole Well, I was wrong on that one. Have you just been driving and somebody's just not driving the way you feel they should drive? And you just trying to control yourself. Or what I like to call just a teeny bit of road rage. I know that drive from my house to here can be very complicated sometimes. And so we have to look at these things because we can develop this dead dog syndrome. By contrast, I want to really look at what David did here. He has every reason to be affected by this disease, this critical spirit. He has every reason. He's been stripped of his security. He's been rejected by his people. No longer is that young man capable of doing a lot of things he could do. This is David's darkest hour. And now, as he's at the pit of his darkest hour, we got some guy chucking stones at him. A mean-spirited, insignificant excuse for a man is throwing rocks at him. And you could just see for David, can it get any worse? That straw that breaks that camel's back. And I know sometimes for myself, and maybe for you too, You ever been caught at the wrong time? Days just going awful. Things just can't go right. You're tired. And all of a sudden, you just get a little bit grouchy. And then somebody says the wrong thing to you when you're so grouchy, and you just want to tear their head off because you are so upset. Well, this is happening to David, and I love this, because what happens then, this is going on. He's getting rocks thrown at him. Things aren't going right. Then somebody comes along and says, here, I got a little bit of advice for you. Sometimes it's like throwing gas on a fire. Let me tell you what to do. I got a plan. And so as we see, then Abishai, son of Zeruiah, said to the king, why should this, here we go, dead dog curse my lord the king? Let me go over and cut his head off. David just going, can it get any worse? Hey, just let me go over there and I'll just cut his head off. I mean, this is a direct game plan. Not let me go talk to him. What do you need me to do? I'm going to go over and just cut this man's head off. I'm going to slit his throat so fast he won't even realize it until he sneezes. And you always know that there's somebody out there who says stuff like that when you're just down or something's happened to you. Hey, you don't have to take that. I got your back. I'll handle it for you. You got your rights, baby. You got your rights. Stand up for yourself. Don't let that person walk all over you. Who do you think? Go over there and just cut that man to pieces. And my favorite line that I hear over and over and over again, I'm going to sue you. I'm going to sue you. You see, Shimei has come at David at one of his hardest moments of his life. He's not only throwing rocks and curses at David, but he's actually lied about David in the complaints that he has. They're not even close to being true. Shimei is so far out of line. David has done nothing to warrant this public assault, this public humiliation that is being given by this man. But they come anyways. And now David, he has a choice here. He can be offended and become resentful and take revenge on this man, which he could have. He's got a man standing right next to him. I'll go cut the man's head off. I got no problem with that. What's his other option? Don't do anything. Or not. I don't have to do anything. I don't have to do anything. 2 Samuel 16:10 says, but the king said, what does this have to do with you, you sons of Zeruiah? So Zeruiah's going, I'll cut his head off. And he goes, whoa, what's this got to do with you? It's all got something to do with me. If David said once in his lifetime, he must have said it at least a half dozen times. You sons of Zeruiah were built with a short fuse. Every one of them carried a chip on their shoulder, always ready to fight. But David refuses to retaliate. David stays calm, does not allow Shimei's short fuse to cause an explosion in his life. And with a wave of a hand, David responds, and he says, what does this have to do with you, sons of Zeruiah? If he's cursing because the Lord said to him, curse David, who can ask? Why do you do this? David then said to Abishai and all the officials, my son, my own flesh and blood, is trying to kill me. He's talking about Absalom. How much more than these Benjamites? Just leave him alone. Let him curse, for the Lord has told him to do it. It may be that the Lord will look upon my misery and restore me to the covenant blessing instead of curse today. Hey, amazing. Leave it be. Leave it alone. Are we getting the picture here? It's really an amazing study of self-control. David's at rock bottom, and along comes this dude who wants to kick David while he's down. But instead of fighting back, David said, maybe the Lord's in on this, and I'm okay. David never got offended. He never took it personally. David didn't even yell. How in the world could he do that? How did David protect himself against that dead dog to turn just like Shimei was? How did he prevent that? How do we stop ourselves from having that same disease? First of all, David remembered his sin with Bathsheba. I'm a sinner. I've done wrong. The prophet Nathan told me I was going to hit some awful times, and he's right. You see, the key to a humble, uncritical spirit is to remember that you've also sinned, that I'm also a sinner. Jesus told a parable of a Pharisee and a tax collector going into the temple to pray. And as they got there, the Pharisee, in front of everybody, hands out, "Thank you, God, thank you for not making me a murderer or an adulterer or an awful sinner." And he looked, there's a tax collector sitting back with his head down. Or even like this guy over here, a cheat, good-for-nothing tax. "Thank you, God, for I'm not like that. I tithe, I'm here, man, thank you." And the tax collector sat there with his, couldn't even look up, and just said, "I'm a sinner. I'm a sinner. Please have mercy on me." The Pharisee could only see sinfulness of somebody else. The tax collector could only see his own sin and needed the mercy and grace of God. Who had the critical spirit? The Pharisee. As Jesus said, "For all those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted." In another instance where Jesus was now being tested, and they feel they finally got the game plan to get him. And they wake up Jesus, and they said, "We need you to help us make a decision here." He says, "What is it?" And as he came out, they brought this woman who they caught in adultery. And they want to know, "What do we do, Jesus? What do we do?" And he said, "We got this man. We got him. We got him." Because if he says, "Forgive them," they go, "Oh, and then break the law? You're going to tell these people to break the law? Are you kidding me?" And half the crowd would probably gone nuts. If he said, "Well, the law said stone the woman," the other half said, "I thought you were going to, where's all this forgiveness?" Either way, we're going to split the crowd. And I just love how Jesus handled it with that calm demeanor. Wrote something in the sand, and he looked up and said, "Let any one of you who is without sin be the first to throw the first stone at her." Wow. And they all walked. And they all walked. And he even looked at her and said, "Where are your accusers?" And I don't know. "I accuse you of nothing. Go and sin no more." Forgiveness. True forgiveness. 1 John 1:8-9 says, "If we say that we have no sin, we deceive ourselves." And I like what the next part is. "And the truth is not in us." If we say we have no sin, we're a liar. And the truth is not in us. Secondly, David remembers God's faithfulness. In Psalm 3, David wrote this while he was fleeing Absalom. And note what he says here. "Lord, how many are my foes? How many rise up against me? Many are saying to me, 'God will not deliver him.' But you, Lord, are a shield around me. You are my glory, the one who lifts my head high. I call out to you, Lord, and he answers me from his holy mountain." He knows God is there. I like that hymn. Maybe you know the song. Count your blessings, name them one by one. Count your many blessings and see what God has done. It is remembering God's faithfulness that we protect ourselves from that self-righteousness that comes with a critical spirit. Third, David remembers God's promises. In Psalms 3:5-8, "I lay down and sleep. I wake again because the Lord sustains me. I will not fear though tens of thousands assail me on every side. Arise, Lord, deliver me. My God, strike all my enemies on the jaw. Break the teeth of the wicked. From the Lord comes deliverance." From the Lord comes deliverance. Not I'll make the deliverance. From the Lord comes deliverance. May your blessings be on your people. The Bible is filled time and time again with promises that Jesus gives us. Hebrews 13 says, "God has said, 'Never will I leave you, never will I forsake you.' So we say with confidence, 'The Lord is my helper. I will not be afraid.'" in 1 Corinthians, if no temptation has overtaken you except what is common to mankind. And God is faithful. He will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear. But when you are tempted, He will also provide a way so that you can endure it. God is there with you, fighting with you. Romans 8:28. And we know that God causes all things to work together for the good of those who love God, to those who are called according to His purpose. This is what's going on in our life. God is there. God is there to help us. Let's get back to our story a little bit with David, because there's more. Time has passed now for David. Absalom has now been brutally murdered. And although it's not what David wanted, it was his son, David is now going back to Jerusalem. David now returns to be king again. And people were flooding him and coming to help. They're bringing all his stuff back into Jerusalem. They're in such a hurry to get David back on the throne. David has now gone from the lowest part of his life to back on top. He's king again. He's rejoicing. The people are rejoicing. And wouldn't you know it, Shimei shows up. Shimei shows up. I can see him walking towards you. Are you kidding me? But look how it changes. Shimei, the son of Gera, the Benjamite from Barim, hurried down with his men of Judea to meet King David. With him were 1,000 Benjamites, along with Ziba, the steward of Saul's household, and his 15 sons and 20 servants. They rushed to the Jordan where the king was. They crossed at the ford to take the king's household over and to do whatever. Let us work. It was like, we'll be your slave, David. So the whole thing changes now. And then Shimei, son of Gera, crossed the Jordan. He fell prostrate before the king and said, "May my Lord not hold me guilty. Do not remember how your servant did wrong on the day my lord the king left Jerusalem. May the king put it out of his mind. For I, your servant now, that I have sinned, but today I've come here as the firstborn of the tribe of Judah to come down and meet my lord the king." Whole different attitude. A whole different attitude. You see, Shimei said some of the three of the hardest words in the English language. I have sinned. And you know, for David, man, it was ringing a bell in his head. It hadn't been too long that when he looked at Nathan, after Nathan confronted him, said, "You're the one," David's response was, "I have sinned." Forgiveness comes easier when we remember in our own past when we failed and we were forgiven. And before we look at David's response to this, let's look at the other side of the equation and think about the times that we might have been in Shimei's shoes. He's just not some kind of Old Testament caricature. His actions are true and his reactions are real. We know this because we've been there. We've experienced the same thing. We've all done something or said something that maybe we offended somebody. And we know that we did wrong, and we know the other person is hung up on that, but we know we did wrong. And we know that at that moment the ball is in our court. It's our serve. It's our move, and we need to come to terms with it. And man, sometimes that's tough to do. And it's even tougher when we know that we're 100% in the wrong. And that's where Shimei finds himself. He knows he was 100% in the wrong. And now he's asking David for forgiveness. Now let's turn to David. What was David's side of the story here? I mean, after Shimei had said to him earlier, he remembered, hey, wasn't you the one that was chucking stones at me? Weren't you the one? David could have been indifferent in this man's confession. David could have ignored him, just looked past him, maybe with a shrug. Indifference is not forgiveness. Indifference is not forgiveness. Indifference is just rage under control. I'll just act like I don't care. And you know inside you're But I just act like I don't care. So here's Shimei. He's spread out on the ground in front of David saying, I have sinned. What was he really saying? Please, please forgive me. And we see in 2 Samuel, Abishai, son of Zeruiah, here we go again, one of those boys said, shouldn't this man be put to death for this? I mean, he cursed you it wasn't too long ago. Remember, we're going to cut his head off and you stopped it? Now here he is. Something has to be done. I mean, he doesn't tell David just to ignore the man. No. That's the one who kicked you when you're down. Now he's down. Drop kick him. You got him right where you want. Kick him and kick him hard. Finish this low life right now. Make an example of him because he's nothing but a loser. But this is what David said. What does this have to do with you, sons of Zeruiah? What right do you have to interfere? Should anyone be put to death in Israel today? Don't I know that today I'm going to be king over Israel? And so the king looked at Shimei and said, you shall not die. And the king promised him this oath. What a magnificent, merciful, controlled person David became. He demonstrates that to us. He demonstrates his strength. He demonstrates his ability to forgive. And this is what we need to learn from David. If we are to develop a spirit of forgiveness in our own lives, if we are to put forgiveness into actual action, we need to learn from David these lessons to help us to have a forgiving heart. And more important, here's a lesson because we all have to deal with a Shimei in our own lives. What lesson can we learn from this story? First, we must cultivate a thicker layer of skin, a buffer to take those jolts that come our way. We need to ask for God's help in this. We need to pray. And what do we need to pray about? We need to ask, Lord, help me not to be so sensitive, so thin-skinned. Help me just to handle these problems better. Take away that China doll mentality. Give me depth. Toughen my hide, please, God. Calm my responses when I just want to yell and scream. Make me patient with those who speak too quickly. And most important, we need to pray, make me like you, dear Jesus. Make me just like you, with that same attitude. This will help us keep our sense of balance so that the slightest push doesn't send us over the top, so that we're always ready to bounce back when these things happen. Secondly, we need to try to understand where the offender is coming from, because it takes a lot of grace. I mean, a lot of grace sometimes to forgive someone. But you know what? God is really, really good at grace. To see beyond the offenses of a person who's striking out at you. Try to find out what is behind their offensive words. What's actually behind their behavior. You might be surprised of what was going on in their lives that we had no idea. I think David had seen maybe a touch of his own immaturity in Shimei as the rocks were coming whizzing by his head. Sometimes we make things more complicated than they really are. We do that. Maybe the critics have been saving up on their own offenses, and they have chosen that this moment you just became the punching bag. Maybe they're just having a bad day. There's a story of a businessman, had a nice company running. And one of the things he noticed in his company was that a lot of his salesmen were taking like longer lunches than normal. And so he called a meeting and said, hey, we're changing, new policy. You get 45 minutes for lunch. Then you got to get back here. No more hour and a half, just throw in whenever you want. This is the new policy. And I also will follow it to the T. And this worked perfect for about a week and a half. On his way from lunch, oh man, I better hurry. I'm gonna barely make it. He gets pulled over by the police. And the police says, you know you're speeding. Yes, but I don't want to hear. No excuses. And he says, do you know who I am? I own one of the biggest companies in this town. You got to know who I am. I'm sorry, sir, but you're going to write me a ticket? Are you serious? Sorry. And he writes him a ticket. Boom. Now he's 15 minutes late, and he's mad. And he walks in his office, steam coming out of his ear, and he calls one of his top salesmen in. Jim, get in here. He said, hey, what can I do? He said, I want to know about this one sales you were supposed to have been working. How'd it go? He said, I lost it. Man, I was on fire there for a while. I don't know. It just didn't work. Are you kidding me? You lost that sale? You worthless, good-for-nothing salesman? Do you understand? I should fire you on this spot. You better figure this out. Get out of my office. The guy walks up and goes, are you kidding me? Does he know who I am? I keep this business running. And he's going to do that? Oh, I should go. And so he walks in, slams open his office door, calls his secretary in. He said, yeah, can I help you? He said, did you get those forms done for me? I've been so busy. Stop your excuses right there. I should fire you on the spot. You good-for-nothing low. I told you what you needed to be, and you're going to look at me and say, you don't got this done? I should just fire you right now. And she walks out of the office. I'm going, does he know who I am? I keep him alive. I'm the one that makes him look so good. I do all his paper. Are you serious? So she sits at her desk and she's sitting there stewing, and all she picks up the phone. Nancy, I know I give you a list of calls. Did you make all those calls? I got half of them. Stop right there. What do you mean half? You had plenty of time to get these done. You know I can have you fired, and I should. You lazy, I can't believe it. And boom, slams the phone. And this lady goes, does she know who I am? Are you kidding me? I keep this business afloat. I keep everything working. And so she gets in her car, and she's on her way home. She pulls her driving her little boys, just smiling, just coming from school, and he's happy. He's got a tear in his new pants. And she just lets him have it. You know how hard I got to work for you. Get your room. No dinner for you. I can't believe it. But don't you give me an excuse. Boy was helping somebody, an older woman, and his pants got caught on somebody's hand, and he didn't even get a chance to explain. He said, I can't believe this. And his pet cat walks in front of him, and he just kicks it. Boom! Now, it would have been a lot better if the owner of that company would have just gone to that little boy's house and just kicked the cat. Instead, what we have here is this kind of chain reaction that happens when we don't stay calm. We don't know how to deal with something honestly. We don't know how to act graciously towards each other. We have to put ourselves sometimes in other people's shoes, because it's going to help us objectify their reaction, and it's going to teach us empathy. And that's hard to do. But how hard is it? Our Savior did it. Well, he was hanging on the cross, and those people put those nails into him, and they were cursing him and did all these things. And Jesus said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Father, forgive them. In that one statement, we realize how our Lord viewed his enemies. Third, we should recall the times in our own life when we have needed forgiveness and then apply that same emotion. All of us, at one time or another, have done something, said something, did something so dumb or extreme or offensive or anything that we needed somebody to forgive us. You see, this happens between family, it happens with friends, it happens at work, it happens at school, and sometimes even at church, that we get to forget that at one time we needed to say we're sorry and ask for forgiveness. We must be candid about this, because nobody is above the pain of humanity. Because when that kicks in, we can get ugly. We can become hateful. We become very, very mean towards that next person. I know for myself, I pray all the time. I need to be authentic. I need to be honest. I need to be real. And I need to have a forgiving heart to see things as Jesus sees them. And lastly, we need to verbalize our forgiveness. Just not say, we just don't think it. We got to say it. We got to tell it. If we did something, just don't keep it in. Spoken words of forgiveness and gracious are marvelous. They're therapeutic to the offender and to ourselves, no matter how small or how big the offense. Saying our feelings removes doubt. Now people realize, well, I was thinking it. Well, how am I supposed to know that? There's a story of a father in Spain, and him and his son got in this huge fight. Huge. And the son left. And the father realized that he had made an awful mistake. An awful mistake. And so he wanted to find his son to say, I'm sorry. And so he searched. And finally somebody says, I think he's in the city of Madrid. He goes, oh man, there's millions of people who live in the city. And he searched and he couldn't find his son. And finally he says, the only thing I'm going to do, he said, I'm going to put an article in the paper and put some signs up. I'm going to find my son Paco if it's the last thing I do. And so he puts in, Paco, I am so sorry. I love you so much. Please meet me in the town square Saturday at noon. Please. And when the man got there that Saturday, there were 800 Pacos sitting in that square because they are all looking for one thing: forgiveness. Forgiveness. And how many times people just, you don't even know, but they need it. They need it. You know, our typical human response a lot of time to offense are really all the wrong things. I've been offended. I'm just going to keep quiet. I'm going to have resentment, or I'm going to have a grudge. I'll just be indifferent. I'm even going to plot to get even. I'll get even. You just see. Now, none of those pleases God, nor do any of those work. Cultivating a forgiving spirit is a very real problem that every one of us wrestles with. We need a heart full of forgiveness. We need a heart like God's grace in our family relationships, in our work and school relationships, in our church relationships. We need to put feet to the hope that is within us. John D. Rockefeller, the one who created Standard Oil Company, who was worth tons and tons of money, who demanded high performance from all of his executives. One day, one of his executives made a major error, and he cost the company $2 million. When word of this man's enormous mistake came out and spread through the offices, everybody became scarce. They didn't want to be close to Rockefeller. I mean, they were so afraid. What is his reaction going to be? One man didn't have a choice. He had a meeting planned with Rockefeller. He wasn't the man who did it, but he had a meeting. He goes, I can't imagine how this meeting's going to go. Rockefeller's just going to be just vicious, and I got to deal with it. So he said, but I got to go. So he straightens his shoulder, tightens his belt, and he goes in his office. As he approached Rockefeller's desk, Rockefeller looked down from a piece of paper that he was writing on. And Rockefeller looked up to him and says, I guess you heard about the $2 million error our friend made. And he says, yes, I heard it. And now he's waiting for Rockefeller to explode. And then Rockefeller looked at him and says, well, I've been sitting here, and I've listed all of our friend's good qualities on this sheet of paper. And I discovered that in the past, this man has made me so much more money than the $2 million. I think it's a real good idea that maybe we just overlook this mistake, because his good points outweigh this one human error. So I think we should just forgive him. You see, whether it is $2 million or a one-sentence off-the-cuff comment, we need to respond with Christ-like grace. We need to respond with complete forgiveness. As I call our singers up, like David, we need an awareness of our own failures, in our own need of forgiveness. We need to be a person after God's own heart. We need to look at people differently. As the married couple, they've been married for 15 years, and she said, this is what we're going to do. For 2 weeks, I'm going to have a box with my name on it, and you're going to have a box with your name. Every time that you do something I don't like, I'm going to write it down, and I'm going to put it in your box. Every time I do something, write it down and put it. And she was just, you left the towel on the bathroom floor. You didn't pick up your clothes. You didn't. That box was just, she was just, and as she's looking, he's just dropping them in her box. Well, when it came 2 weeks and they opened the box, she said, go ahead, open your box. And the husband opened the box and he goes, oh, forgot about that one. And he said, you open yours. And her man was just packed. And she opened it up. And everyone said the same thing. I love you. I love you. I love you. I love you. You see, that's what it's all about. You see, yeah, we got faults. And we try. But we know for a fact that Jesus loves us. We know for a fact that he's there with his arms open. So I will forgive you. We need to develop that heart like David did. A heart after God. And how important that is. You see, this is a message this morning. To ask Jesus, please, I made mistakes. And he said, I know you made mistakes. But come, it's okay. And I know maybe some of you are battling that right now. Oh man, I did. Give it to God. This is what he tells us. I love you. Give it to me. Some of you are struggling. Maybe I may like to become a Christian. I don't know. Give it to God. Talk to someone. Come up here. We'll pray with you. We'll do whatever it takes because we're family. This is just a building, but you people are the family. It is our job to show mercy. It is our job to show love. It is our job to show forgiveness. Because that's what Jesus Christ showed us. Let's go to the Lord in prayer.